Chapter 22, Down an Empty Highway. The takedown had been pushed back twice. The complexities of the operation were just too enormous. But the ATF finally settled on a date, and John Carr shared it with me 1 week out, Thursday, March 9th, 2006, at 6 a.m. For me, the home stretch would prove the hardest. Now that I knew the end date, I just wanted the damn thing over with. I'd been effectively off the grid for a month now, walking the high wire without a net. There were no cover teams, no backup at all. Kevin Duffy, my old friend from the Riverside County Sheriff's Department, had asked for increased patrols around Scooter's place and the House of His Spirit Circle. John Carr was calling every day to make sure I was still alive. I felt like a soldier on short time, nervous about getting picked off in the waning days before leaving the war zone. Whenever friends asked me to join them for a night on the old town, I declined, worried about getting ambushed. I was getting a stiff neck from looking over my shoulder. By Wednesday, one day before the takedown, everything was set. I would be waiting at the house Thursday morning at 6 a.m. when lawmen from the ATF and the Riverside Sheriff's Department would arrive to escort me, Jenna, and Sierra to a safe place, provided, of course, Jenna wanted to go. That was a big question mark, given the bomb I was about to drop on her. If all went according to plan, we'd head across town to Shooter's place and pick up old Joe, whose marching orders were to pack a bag, stay sober, and meet us outside the trailer between 6 and 6:30. John Carr had cleared my friend to stay with us until the U.S. Marshals could make a decision on whether to take us into the WITSEC program. And then I phoned Jenna. "I'm coming home tonight. Fuck you. The locks have all been changed and your garage door opener doesn't work. I'm coming home, Jenna. You're not welcome here," she said, and hung up on me. If something was going to happen, I wanted to go down protecting my family and home, such as it was. Melodramatic maybe, but that's how I was feeling on the eve of the takedown. On Wednesday night, as over 700 lawmen from across the country were converging on Southern California, I went to my last Vogels church in JB's garage. I was nervous as hell as I sat in that meeting, and I wasn't even wearing a wire. I was so close to getting off that wild fucking ride, and yet coincidence had put me in a room with every member of the Hammett chapter just hours before the shit hit the fan. Most of these boys would be staring through the bars come this time tomorrow. I looked around at the faces in the garage, faces of the men who had called me brother for the past 3 years. Some of these boys were friends, decent people who'd made the mistake of throwing in with bullies and assholes. I wasn't out to hurt all of them, and I'd asked John to spare a handful of those Vogels come Judgment Day, but my handler made no promises. If free passes were to be handed out, Special Agent Carr wasn't saying. So there I sat in JB's garage, stressed out of my mind. It was an eternal hour and a half of paranoid thoughts and jangled nerves. Someone knows. Big Roy is looking at me funny. I'm too quiet. I'm fidgeting. My armpits are drenched. They're gonna fucking kill me. I just know it. The rational part of me laid this off to an overactive imagination, but man, the damn thing was galloping wild. And it didn't help that it was the weirdest friggin' church I'd ever attended. I mean, nothing got done. It was just one big party in the garage that night. Everyone was in a great mood. I asked Big Roy if I should read the minutes. "Don't bother. Should I collect the dues?" "Nah, we'll do it next week." "Motherfucker, there is no next week." After church adjourned, the whole chapter wanted to keep the party going and raise some hell around town. "Come on, George, ride with us," pleaded the boys. I told them thanks, but I had things to do. Truth was, I was worried I'd end up taking a sand nap. I motored over to Shooter's place and left the Heritage in his garage. The ATF would collect that bike later. Then I gathered the leaf bags stuffed with belongings I'd been collecting over the past month and tossed them into the truck's bed. When everything was ready, I called Jenna again. "I'll be home in a few hours," I told her. "I'm shutting the lights off and going to bed," she snapped, then hung up. As promised, the house was dark when I pulled into the driveway. It was late, close to midnight now. I snuck in through the garage and entered the kitchen, pulled off my boots, and headed into the hallway. I passed old Joe's bedroom and noticed Jenna had turned it into a nursery. There was a crib and a changing table in there now. I moved quietly past Sierra's room and entered the master bedroom. After stripping off my clothes, I slipped beneath the covers next to Jenna, mentally wrung out, yet too wired to sleep. If my fiance knew I was there, and I suspect she did, she wasn't letting on. Waves of emotions washed over me, from relief to hope to anxiety to happiness to sickening, sweat-popping fear. Sometime after 5 a.m., I got tired of staring at the nightstand clock, climbed from bed, threw my clothes back on, and headed into the kitchen to brew coffee and smoke a cigarette. John Carr's orders were to stay put and wait for a police escort out of Hemet. But I was never good at following orders. I was dying to know what was happening out there, and Jack Fight's place was less than a mile away. Jack was on the ATF's target list, specifically his little meth stash out near the backyard shed. Curiosity had me by the short hairs, so about 20 minutes before takedown, I finished the coffee, lit my cigarette, and slipped from the house. As I drove through the dim streets of Villa Vista, headed toward Highway 74, I realized disobeying orders had been a mistake. 2 Riverside County cruisers sped past, flying in the direction I'd just come. I arrived at Jack Fight's house a few minutes later. The ATF had hit him early. There was an armored truck parked at the curb and federal agents swarming the property carrying automatic weapons and wearing bulletproof vests. Those SRT boys weren't playing around. At that moment, my Nextel rang. It was Special Agent Jeff Ryan on the line, apparently released from shooting range duty, calling to say he was on his way. Shit, no time for sightseeing. I had to get back to the house fast. In just a few minutes I'd been gone, 4 deputy sheriff's cruisers had arrived on the Spirit Circle. The street was sealed now. With that much protection, I felt like the President of the United States. As I jumped from the pickup and made a beeline for the house, Special Agent Ryan emerged from his unmarked SUV to intercept me. Behind him strode a stocky Mexican deputy and a ponytailed female officer, both wearing the pressed tan and drab green uniform of the Riverside County Sheriff's Department. "Everything okay, George?" asked Jeff as he walked toward the front door. "I'll let you know after I wake Jenna," I told him. "Better hurry. There's not much time." I flipped on the living room lights and left Jeff and the 2 deputies while headed down the hall to wake Jenna. I didn't know what to expect. I mean, on the best of mornings, waking that woman was like waking Satan himself. And this was nowhere near the best of mornings. My fiance was about to get a motherfucking wake-up call. I clicked on the lamp and sat on the edge of the bed. "Jenna," I whispered, giving her shoulder a gentle shake. "Hey, Jenna, you gotta get up." She rolled over and blinked sleepily at me. "Baby, you've gotta get up," I said softly. "The cops are here." She pushed herself up on her elbows, instantly awake. "Where's the warrant?" That girl had sold and used about every drug imaginable, and she must have figured the law had finally caught up with her. "They can't come in here without a warrant," she insisted. "It ain't like that," I said. "What do you mean it ain't like that? Tell them they need a warrant or get the fuck out." Jenna was building up a mountain of steam now. She threw off the covers and lurched from bed, revealing her black Boggles old lady pajamas. Later she would claim she sniffed something different in the house that morning. Not the usual scent of coffee and cigarettes. This was something different. A sterile, antiseptic smell was how she described it. The smell of cops. She changed from the bedroom, blowing past the female deputy in the hallway without a "what the fuck," and then storming into the living room where the Mexican deputy and Special Agent Ryan were waiting. The law was ill-prepared for the coming of Satan's child. "What the fuck?" Jenna raged at the 2 strangers. "Where's the warrant?" Jeff gestured toward the couch. "Have a seat, Jenna, and I'll explain." "I don't fucking know you," she flashed, cutting him off. "Get the fuck out of my house." Then she turned to me. "What's going on, George?" "Just listen to the man, baby," I said. "Listen to what? Somebody better tell me what the fuck is going on." Agent Ryan took his cue, addressing Jenna as if he'd been practicing in front of a mirror. "For the last 3 years, George has been working undercover in conjunction with the ATF and local law enforcement to bring down the Vagos motorcycle gang." My fiancée stood there blinking at the man, looking as if she had been sledgehammered. She was trying to process what she just heard, only she couldn't. It was too much. Ryan kept flogging the dead horse. Right now, there are 72 raids taking place throughout this city. Riverside County, Orange County, and San Bernardino County.